Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of NCW, also known as New Comic Wednesday. If you haven't been with us before, we chat for a few minutes every Wednesday about Zenescope's newest releases. To find our newest releases, you will go to Zenescope.com, comic books, and then press new releases, and you'll be able to see everything that came out today as well as previous weeks. If you'd like to hear more about our latest releases, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, because every Wednesday at 3 p.m., it's me, Amber. I come on to do NCW. On top of that, make sure that you share, like, and comment or whatever, etc., so other people can find our wonderful show. Today, we're going to have two guests on. First of all, we're going to have Jenna Lynn Wright. You guys know that I love talking to Jenna, and I'm a huge, huge fan, so I can't wait to bring her on in just a little bit. And then we're also going to have our wonderful podcast host, Mark Sells, who is also our e-commerce manager here, because I know a lot of you always have a lot of questions about the podcast, and I look forward to that. So I'm happy to have everybody here. And all my VIPs, shout out to our VIPs really, really quick. We're going to be doing our fun holiday con today, and I can't wait to hang out with everybody. That's why I'm wearing my Merry Catmas sweater. That's right. I got black cats on here. For you guys that don't know, I have a black cat. His name is Sombra. He's my littlest wee babyest, boo loviest, boo love, snow angel Christmas cupcake. And that's what I say to him every time I walk into the door. He is my boy. Hi, everybody. I'm glad that we get to hang out today. Today's release is Myth and Legends Blood PHARAOH. It's $8.99. And again, our writer, Jenna Lynn Wright, will be on in just a second. I would love to show you guys the covers. So, as always, this is cover A. Yeah, cover A. I love cover A. We were actually talking about this in the office. So bloody, like rain just fallen from the sky. And if you guys know anything about the 10 plagues of Egypt, then you definitely know why cover A is the way it is. Here is cover B. Ooh, spooky. Again, more plagues and very ominous character in the background. Ominous. And here is cover C. Three fantastic covers for a fantastic book, Myth and Legends Blood PHARAOH, again, which is $8.99. It's in our web store. I'm going to quickly read the synopsis, and then I'm going to bring on writer Jenna Lynn Wright. From, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to say this person's name. I'll just say from, to Ramses, the story of Egypt's past had been filled with pharaohs and god kings that changed the very course of history itself. And as the bloodstained sands slipped through the hands of time, the tale of a forgotten prince, one of strength and capable of great evil, Rudimon, has remained hidden, off in a private collection, undisturbed until now. When an ancient evil is released, bringing with a power not seen for centuries, the world may not be ready for the return of the Blood PHARAOH. 72 pages of horror like you've never seen them before. Without further ado, I am going to bring on Jenna.
Hello.
Jenna, it's been forever since I last saw you.
It's been so long.
How have you been?
I've been doing really well. How have you been?
I've been good. I actually read Myth and Legends last week because I just wanted to read it so bad. And when I read it, I was like, oh my God, can't wait to have, I was like, Jenna would never disappoint me. And she did not disappoint me.
I'm so happy you liked it. It was a blast to write. It really was.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we are hopping in between two different storylines kind of in this story. Tell me the backstory of both of them.
So in the past, there's the Blood PHARAOH Rudimon, who it's him and his sister are kind of power hungry and not very nice people. And they get a hold of these tablets that give them way too much power, and it all goes horribly wrong. And then in the present day, we have kind of an Indiana Jonesy type college professor and his grad students who get a hold of the tablets and don't realize how dangerous they are. And we cut back and forth to the stories. So you find out what happened to Rudimon, and then you find out what befalls our young students, and it's not very pretty.
Isn't that like the story of like all college like horror movies or horror
Oh yeah.
horror
It's
stories. Like they think they know what they're getting into, but they have no idea.
it's always people playing with things they should not be playing with. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
I'm team that. That is very, very important. I remember you mentioned the last time you were in NCW about your love for Egypt. How much fun was it to write a story like this?
Total a blast. I mean, the guy I'm writing about in Egypt is a huge jerk, but getting to kind of go back in the past and create this character, even though he is a villain, which are the most fun to write. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot, and I mean, yeah, who wouldn't want to like kind of grow up to be an Indiana Jones archaeologist? That would be so fun. So it was great to play around in that world a lot.
Speaking of, what is your favorite like Mummy Egypt movie?
Oh, the Mummy with Brendan Fraser, because Brendan Fraser. That's all you
Jenna.
need.
I knew that we were going to be best friends before, but like this solidifies. I don't know if you know, The Mummy is like my all-time favorite movie.
It's a fantastic movie, and Rachel Weisz is in there, and it's such a blast, and it's so much fun, and like Brendan Fraser has a place in my heart. I just love him so much.
Same. I love The Mummy. Like, not to go on a side tangent here, but I could literally record like from start to finish, say the entire script of The Mummy. In my house right now at Universal, they have the ride The Mummy ride, which I love. But
Yeah.
when they changed the ride like a couple years ago, and they ended up moving the lockers around, and when they did that, they sold pieces of the ride at Universal. And so I bought a piece of the ride. It's this huge
Awesome.
backdrop. I gotta find
Yeah.
the picture. I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna look for the picture and I'll show it to
Yeah.
everybody. But it's of the actual ride sign, and my goal is to take it to a con and get Brendan Fraser to sign it.
In our house, whenever somebody does something stupid, straight up, someone will yell, "Benny, you're on the wrong side of the river."
I knew we were gonna be best friends.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I knew we were gonna be best friends. Every time somebody says something and I have a question, I go, question, why does he like cats? Second question. And people never understand my reference. Ralph hates when I say that.
I would get it. I would totally get it.
Now we've gone on a Mummy side tangent. But what kind of research did you need to do for this story?
The biggest research I had to do was reminding myself exactly what all of the plagues were, because there are so many of them. Like, you know about kind of the illnesses and the frogs and stuff, but like I had to remind myself of the water turning to blood, and it's vicious, man. It is vicious. People getting punished
crazy.
all over the place.
It's crazy too that like in the Bible, like this is what it's based off of. Can you imagine just like experiencing all of this?
No, it would be horrific. It would be, but I'm going to say in the book, there is something that happens with the frogs that was my favorite thing to write in the whole book. I don't know if I'm allowed to spoil it, but that was my favorite.
Spoil it.
A guy runs outside and he gets crushed to death by a pile of frogs that are like coming out of the cloud. He gets crushed by frogs, and it was my favorite death to write.
What is your favorite plague? Is it the frogs?
Probably the frogs. Yeah. I mean, if I had to choose from plagues, I think I would pick the frogs.
I would pick I don't know. I don't know if I would pick the frogs. I like the frogs.
Yeah.
The blood rain is always very cool though.
Yeah, that's terrifying. I mean, if you see that coming out of the sky, you know it's pretty much over for you.
You do. So as in true Zenescope fashion, we end on a pretty heavy cliffhanger. Any hope for a sequel?
I hope so. I think the last time we talked about how much I like to write villains, and he was a pretty irredeemable villain. And so if I could come back and write another story about them, I would be very happy to do that.
Again, today we're talking about Myth and Legends Quarterly, Blood Pharaoh, fantastic read, $8.99 in our web store. And before I let Jenna go, she's always a great, great guest. Here is the picture that used to be in my old office when I was working in conventions. Right here.
Oh my God, I love it.
It's the huge it's so heavy too because it's vinyl. That if it like I had to use like hangers to hang it up. Like you couldn't or you had to nail it to the wall. Like nothing else was going to work.
Yep. I love it. It's perfect.
Wow, I can't. We got a side note about the mummy. Like, Jenna, you're the best. Like, I hate to be biased, but like, you are.
Just gonna be over here basking in the praise.
Are you writing anything for Zenescope anytime soon?
Yes, I think coming out soon is the holiday special featuring Krampus, and I wrote that.
Right. That another reason to have you on. You're gonna be on so much.
I'm so excited. I love coming on this show.
No one's sad about it. Next time, we're just gonna go for 5 minutes. Our favorite mummy quotes.
Absolutely, that's fine. I can do it. I'm up to the
Perfect.
challenge.
I love it. Okay, thank you so much, Jenna. I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you for having me.
Again, that was Jenna Lynn Wright, the writer of Myth and Legends, Blood Pharaoh. It's $8.99. If you guys love Egypt, this is the book. If you love The Mummy and it's your favorite movie, you're my favorite person. If it's not, I don't understand you. Please explain. Cough, cough, Ralph Desco, who hates The Mummy for some reason. He loves to talk smack about The Mummy. But you will love this story. There is some great Egypt research. And as always, who doesn't love a college bloodbath, man? I love seeing how college kids like think they're going to get out of something. And they're like, oh, no big deal. And then they don't get out of it. So again, today we have 3 wonderful covers. I am going to be bringing on our e-commerce manager, Mark Sells. If you guys don't know Mark, you're about to, because okay, whatever, Ralph. You talk smack about The Mummy, and that's all I have to say about it. Every time I say question, why isn't it like cats? You don't ever laugh at my jokes. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to have Jenna on again, and we're going to talk about it. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to bring on our wonderful e-commerce manager, Mark Sells.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Amber.
Hi. Do you think everybody just got weirded out because they're like, we've only ever heard Mark's voice, but never seen his face?
Maybe. I mean, this is not really a live stream face. It's more of a radio face.
Lies. Adrian's in the comments right now. I know she's typing and she's like, it's definitely a live stream face.
Well, thank you. That's too kind.
Mark is really, really great. He's been with Zenescope for over a year and he's done wonders with the web store. So anything that goes right on the web store, all Mark. Anything that goes wrong in the web store, all Mark.
Well, we hope it doesn't go wrong, right?
No, you're really great. Let's talk about the podcast. So how did the podcast come to be?
Well, the podcast started kind of back in the summer of 2020. Shortly after I was hired by Zenescope, I had many discussions with Ralph about creating different forms of content for our readers and fans. And out of those discussions came Movie Club. Also out of those discussions came the podcast. It was something that I had to do a proof of concept for. And it was something that incorporated many years of my background in radio and the entertainment business.
So you put together the podcast. What was the outline? Did you always know what the outline was going to be? How did you come up with the outline?
Well, I'm sure a lot of folks probably were wondering, everything Zen, at least for me as kind of a music buff, the first thing that pops into my head is the song by Bush. And so the interesting part was that in the original proof of concept, I put together a demo for Ralph and Joe, and we had the song, the guitar riff from Everything Zen at the very beginning. In doing research and trying to to get licensing to actually use the song, because Gavin Rossdale wrote the song, they wanted a lot of money per podcast. I mean, we're talking 5 digits per podcast. Crazy. But they were excited to have us, interested in using the song. But after that, we realized we definitely couldn't use the song. So we kind of went in a different direction, and we've been using some sort of stock music for background. But it was the initial proof of concept. I submitted the demo probably in September of last year. Joe and Ralph signed off immediately, and we had our first podcast in November of last year with Jonathan Scarf and Neil LaBute from Van Helsing.
So, who has been your favorite podcast guest?
Oh, not to sound like a politician, but I honestly have enjoyed each of them for different reasons. I guess I'm kind of a pop culture nerd, and for me, it's just fun to talk to different people and learn about their creative process, whether it's as a writer, an artist, an actor, a musician, director. One thing I can tell you though, categorically, my favorite podcasts are probably the ones involving music. A chunk of my career has been in the music and the radio industry, and I've always been a huge fan of music. I'm an 80s music nut. So being able to incorporate a little bit of music, especially on a podcast, which is audio centric, is really great. And it makes it sound even better.
Yeah. The latest guest you were very excited about. You want to tell us a little bit about our latest guest?
In the November podcast, we got to chat with Lauren Mayberry, who's the front person for the synth pop band Churches. I have been a fan of theirs since the very get-go, since back in like 2013 when they played at South by Southwest, which was their first sort of US tour or their first performance. And so it was kind of a fun thing to do. I have been working on trying to secure them for probably a good 8 to 10 months.
It was so funny. Right after the podcast came out, I'm a huge fan of Cannons, and I actually just went to see them on tour in Boston on Monday. And my friend and I exchange music every so often, and he's like, "I don't know if you've heard of this band Churches, but they're so good." And I was like, "Oh my God, listen to our podcast."
Well, and the funny thing about that is that the day the podcast was released, Ralph is messaging me saying, "Hey, I just got invited to see Churches tonight in Austin. Should I go?" I'm like, "Should you go? Of course."
Yes.
So that was kind of cool.
Funny. So every month you have a featured artist, a featured character. How do you choose those?
Kind of like throwing darts on a dartboard, I guess. Sort of. I mean, every month we try to have a theme. Joe will and Ralph will contribute and kind of steer us in that direction as to what they'd like us to focus on a particular month. And then when we first started the podcast, it really was about focusing on our core characters. We wanted to cover Van Helsing out of the starting gate. We wanted to cover Robin, Belle. But after that, it's now more focused on trying to tie in with new releases. What kinds of books we have coming on. And like you were talking with Jenna, and since we have, we released Myths and Legends today, our focus for December is going to be Myths and Legends.
I love that. Yay. How long does it take to put together the podcast?
Oh, longer than I would like. But it's well, and I will take a time out to give you props, because I have to say, you do such a great job, Amber, at creating fun facts for the podcast. Right. Plus, last month, you helped fill in the void for Chris's Corner by highlighting a great book for folks to read, and the newly christened Amber's Attic segment.
Amber's Attic.
Yes. But when you submit your segments, everything's crisp and clean. But the interviews and all of the different segments, they require a substantial amount of editing. And then when you get into special effects, you get into music layering and all of those things, it can take hours and hours and hours and hours of time. And, when we do interviews, sometimes some interviews that Ralph and I have done, they've been so awesome, but they come in at like an hour and 15 minutes. And we only have about an hour for the podcast. So a lot of that has to be cut down considerably. And that's where a lot of the time comes in, is editing.
If you guys have any pending podcast questions that you'd like to ask Mark, make sure that you drop them in the comments. In the meantime, any fun stories about the podcast? Anything ever go wrong or anything that made you laugh?
Well, there's a lot of fun stories. I think, the first podcast that we did where we had Neil LaBute and Jonathan Scarf from Van Helsing was a particularly awesome one for us, because I don't know why, but for the longest time, sci-fi series Van Helsing, which everybody in the Zenescope circles know that it was based on our character, our book. But there was this sort of like weird sort of thing where they weren't necessarily promoting it as such. And it was so cool. If you go back and listen to that podcast, Neil LaBute, who is an amazing playwright and writer and director, producer, he's the one that kind of cobbled all of it together for Sci-Fi to actually launch the series and directed many episodes of it. And he's on the podcast talking to Ralph and I saying, oh yeah, it's totally based on Zenescope's books. In fact, in the writer's room, we had all of these, all these Van Helsing and Helsing comic books. And so that was particularly exciting, I think, is to get that affirmation.
That's awesome. I will say, when I was at New York and I would try to sell Van Helsing because everybody would see her as a character. And I would say, well, did you ever watch Sci-Fi? And they said, yeah. And then I said, well, Van Helsing, no way, no way. Yeah, but in true Hollywood fashion, none of it is the same, literally nothing. But I would tell them, if you look at the executive producers, you'll see Ralph Tedesco and Joe Rush on there. And that's how you'll know they're the same people in the book.
That's right.
Anything that you want to tease about our next Everything Zen?
Gosh, I can't really give any definitive details for December, because this is the worst time of the year, by the way, trying to get featured guests, because everybody's on holiday.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult time, because even last year in 2020 for December, we didn't have a podcast. We couldn't get anybody. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get some folks. And while I can't say anything specifically about like December or 2022, there are a lot of guests that I've been working on for probably over a year. We've been promised the moon. You can't hold me to any of this, but I will say I've been in talks with Disney with their Star Wars Boba Fett Mandalorian series. There may be Ted Lasso, Cobra Kai, Clerks, Aliens, What We Do in the Shadows, potential guests out there. And one final thing too, if any of the listeners have ideas, things that they'd like to hear in the podcast, people they'd like to hear from, they'd like us to interview, anything, let us know. You can email Adrian at info@zenescope.com, and I guarantee you I will receive it.
It's true. It's crazy. Don't you guys live in the same house?
I think so.
Thank you, Mark, so much for coming on. I'm really, really glad. I definitely want to have you on again, talk a little bit more about the podcast. If you guys aren't listening to the podcast, Everything Zen, you can go to our YouTube channel right now and get all of the latest episodes. We're also on Apple, basically everywhere you could possibly get your podcast, right?
Yes.
So you're going to want to check these out. They're usually about an hour in length. And then Mark does a really, really great job actually putting together extra parts. So if the interviews go longer, he'll usually cut a segment so you can get the rest of what the interview was.
That's right. Ralph's director's cut in many instances, those interviews that go 2 hours.
What?
We've had a few that have gone pretty long.
But we're really, really looking forward to December's. When is December's podcast dropping, Mark?
if everything aligns, it should be next Thursday.
Next Thursday. So keep an eye out. It'll happen before the holiday season. There'll be a lot of awesome, announcements that we do on the podcast always. And if you ever have a guest suggestion, as Mark mentioned before, please email info@zenescope.com. Mark will get the suggestion.
Yep. We love feedback and anything that can make the podcast more fun, more engaging. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you, Mark, so much. I hope to have you on real soon.
Of course. Thanks so much, Amber. Bye.
Well, again, today I was just talking about Mark. If you guys haven't listened to our podcast, Everything Zen, it's been going on for over a year, and Mark does an excellent job. He is our host, and you finally have put a name to the face to the name. There we go. What's happening here? I'd like to shout out Matthew talking about my awesome baller sweater. That's right. It has cats on it. You can see there's all of the cats. It says Merry Catmas because my littlest wee babyest, boo loviest, boo love, snow angel, Christmas tree, cookie, cake, sombra is love of my life, my black cat, and I got this sweater just for him, and I love it. It's very comfy. $10 at Walmart. Not that I'm shouting out Walmart right now, but just $10, and you could have this soft hoodie, and we could match. I think Kiera's going to go buy one. Anyway, so make sure that you check out our podcast, Everything Zen. A new episode should be dropping next week. And as always, Mark is a great salesperson. Mark is a great e-commerce manager. He's based in Denver. I wish I could hang out with Mark more. I'm bummed I can't hang out with Adrian more, but they're fantastic. And I'm so lucky that I get to work with incredible people like them. Again, today's release was Myth and Legends Quarterly Blood Pharaoh, which is fantastic for any Egypt fan. If you guys are a big fan of The Mummy, greatest movie alive, I could spend 5 minutes just doing a Mummy segment where I'm literally just quoting The Mummy. I kind of want to do that. Could think of my children. You don't have any children. Someday I might. I could go on forever about The Mummy. I love The Mummy. I know everything about The Mummy. Hugh the Mummy fan. Anyway, so if you're a big fan of Egypt, you will love this story, $8.99 in our web stores. Speaking of, our next week's release that will be dropping again next Wednesday, where you get to hang out with me, is another Myth and Legends, and that's Prophecy. And we're doing our 2021 holiday. I didn't realize it was literally coming out next week. I guess Jenna might be coming on again. I'll have to ping her a note. I didn't realize it was next week. I sometimes get bad at looking at the publishing schedule, so that's pretty funny. So yes, next week, those are our 2 releases. Lots is happening today, a lot. Speaking of our VIPs, I have one of the fun White Dragon gifts that we have here. There's going to be a very fun White Dragon segment that will be taking place. Me and Joe may or may not have put together all the gifts. I'll tell you that I put together all the good ones. Maybe Joe put together all the sketch ones. So stay tuned, everybody. But that will be taking place today at 6 p.m. Come hang out with us. If you're a VIP, go to your Facebook official page. It will only be streaming there. And if you're not a VIP, become a VIP. It's $99 one time for life, and you're a VIP. And there's going to be a really, really, really interesting Zenescope Black shipping program that will come, but only if you're a VIP. Speaking of VIP, we also made announcements last week on NCW with PHARAOH that we will be having a VIP West Coast event. It will be in Vegas, just like you guys voted. An official date, TBD. I think we announced the date there, but I don't want to say an official date until I know that everything is locked in and booked. In the meantime, definitely prepare and know that in late April, you should spend your wonderful Saturday day with us, because it'll be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. If you can't make it to Vegas, though, we are going to do a VIP Philly event in the fall time sometime. And our convention schedule will be dropping very, very soon. So you'll know what our full lineup for 2022 is going to be. But I will tell you that our first convention of the year will be Fan Expo Philly, which is going to be April 8th through the 10th. So if you're in Philly, you'll get to hang out with us April 8th through the 10th. Mark your calendars. On top of that, we have our holiday virtual event that will be taking place next Thursday and Friday. It's going to be a really, really great time. We are going to be doing some fun giveaways. There's going to be maybe a Christmas reading. I really wanted to do this gingerbread house segment where I built a gingerbread house. Ralph kind of acts that. If you want the segment, though, drop it in the comments. If not, I'm just going to build a gingerbread house on NCW because if you don't know, I build literally the worst gingerbread houses. And it's just going to be so much fun to watch all of this stuff completely fall apart in everything out. On top of that, we also have our Game on Games retailer segment, which will be taking place next Tuesday. If you guys didn't know, this past Tuesday was Giving Tuesday, and I really hope that you gave back in some way because there are so many people in need during the holiday season that just need a love and appreciation. Just text somebody, let them know how much they mean to you. It's very, very difficult during the holidays for some people. And, I just like to shout out, you guys are all really great. And so is Game on Games and Comics. So join us next Tuesday. 50% of all proceeds for every retailer live stream will go to Game on Games and Comics. So anything that you buy will go to a very, very good cause. On top of that, our next movie club will be taking place that following Friday after the virtual con. It will be Silent Night, Deadly Night. Our regular movie club crew will be in attendance, and this will be the last movie club of the entire year. Last movie club of the entire year. So if you want to talk about Silent Night, Deadly Night, I still think that we should have done Black Christmas. It's just my opinion on it. But you'll get to hang out with the crew and unveil our last cover of the year. I wonder if I have anything else. I don't think so. I think we're all set. So again, if you're a VIP, make sure that you join us tonight because there will be some fun gift giveaways. Casey wrapped all of these. Shout out to Casey. She's going to be wrapping more because that's what we do here. You guys are all really, really the best. And if you haven't watched The Mummy, go watch The Mummy. This has been it on NCW with Zenescope, where you come for the covers, but you stay for the stories. See you guys all tonight at